Hello, hello everybody. It's lovely to be with you again in Tea with a Druid 29. So do pull up a chair and do say, even if you've been here before, say where you're from. If you're new, say where you're from. It'd be great to see you. Holly Mayland is the first person's comment I see here saying hello. That's great. Hi, Holly. And it's been a wonderful hot day here in Sussex, fantastically hot, but rather lovely. Beth from Abruzzo in Italy. Calistoga in California, great. Berlin, hello. Augusta, Georgia. Selkie in Stratford, Texas. Lovely. So everybody's gathering into the clearing, wandering, coming in from near and far, and gathering in the sacred grove. That's great to see you. So I'm going to wait a bit for you guys to all arrive. Isalinda from Portugal. Yes, and it's lovely seeing many of these names where you're here every week, which is fantastic. Ruth Parkinson from Lincolnshire on holiday there. Okay, great. So now, here we go. I'm going to invite you to ask yourself a question. Don't think too hard about this. Just write the first thing that comes into your head without analyzing it. So I'm going to ask you this question. I'm going to lean forward so you can hear more clearly. Would you consider yourself, or are you, a mystic or a magician? So just intuitively, what comes back to you? Are you a mystic or a magician? And then just type MYS or MAG so we can get a sense of what you're feeling and thinking. I'll ask the question again later, so don't worry about don't worry about what do you mean by that and so on. Just intuitively, just from how it sounds, do you consider yourself a mystic or a magician? And now let that question fall away and ask yourself again, nobody's going to hold you to this, and but just at the present time, do you feel that you're an introvert or an extrovert? Now, you may have done a test, you may know the answer to that, or you may simply feel that you probably are an introvert or an extrovert. If you're not sure, then by all means write that, but tap that in. And I see somebody saying, I feel myself an apprentice. Yes, you could be an apprentice magician, an apprentice mystic. I'm not suggesting that this connotes any great title, or it's just you'll see why in a minute. You'll see where we're going with this in a minute. And it takes a while for these answers to come through, but what would be fantastic would be if everybody who watched this video typed in their answers, because then in a week's time, we'd have maybe up to 4,000, 4,000 answers. And then we could have quite a nice statistical sample to play with here. So don't feel shy. Do please type in. And if you're watching this on YouTube or on the recording on Facebook or on my blog, so if it's not live, do please type in your answer, because you're contributing to the great enterprise of science in doing that. And that's great seeing the answers coming in. Introvert, extrovert, great, fantastic. That's lovely. Keep them coming in. And let me, in the meanwhile, let me back up and explain what I mean by these terms, magician and mystic. They're so evocative and wonderful. And we can terms like this, which have been around for a very long time. Once you start to look at definitions, you can easily get caught up in scholarly debates around it. There are all sorts of ambiguities and different meanings associated with the terms and all the rest of it. Now isn't the time for us to get involved in all of that. And we'll avoid too the problem that can happen with academia, where the language starts to get really dense. I just came across this quote from an academic, Gelman, who writes that the mystical experience is a unitive experience that involves a phenomenological de-emphasis, blurring, or eradication of multiplicity, where the cognitive significance of the experience is deemed to lie precisely in that phenomenological feature. I think what he's trying to say is the mystical experience is an experience of oneness. So I think there are more accessible ways to talk about these things. And I've got a couple of other quotes for you. Blakemore and Jennett wrote, "The essence of the mystical experience is the encounter between God and the human being, the creator and creature. This is a union which leads the human being to an absorption or loss of individual personality. It is a movement of the heart as the individual seeks to surrender itself to ultimate reality. It is thus about being rather than knowing." And then the mystic Evelyn Underhill wrote about the term mysticism, that it is one of the most abused words in the English language. It has been used in different and often mutually exclusive senses by religion, poetry, and philosophy, has been claimed as an excuse for every kind of occultism, for dilute transcendentalism, vapid symbolism, religious or aesthetic sentimentality, and bad metaphysics. On the other hand, it has been freely employed as a term of contempt by those who have criticized these things. It is much to be hoped that it may be restored sooner or later to its old meaning as the science or art of the spiritual life. So a couple of interesting takes on what mysticism means, what the mystic is about. And my definition is quite simply that the main goal of the mystic is union with the divine, seeking to surrender, to let go of the self and the world of appearances and the world of sensation, to become one with all being, with all life, with the divine, with deity. That's the goal of the mystic. And so if that's your goal, if that's your prime aim, then you could say perhaps that you are a mystic, or you're a seeker on the mystical path. Your mysticism is your way. And whether we're talking about Christian mystics, Sufi mystics, or nature mystics, the nature mysticism of Druidry, for instance, the goal is all the same, which is the surrender of the little self to oneness with all being. Now, what about the magician then? The magician may have as their goal these experiences, mystical experiences of union with all being. But in addition, the magician sees herself or himself as an active being and wishes to engage with life and to use particular technologies or techniques, if you like, such as ritual, journeying in consciousness, changing consciousness, working with divination and so on, using particular techniques, using magic in order to achieve specific ends, whether that is alterations in consciousness, whether it's communing with beings in the other world, or whether it's actually attempting to change circumstances, to transform one's own life or other lives for the better. And while the mystic seeks to avoid the distractions of the world of appearances to a great degree, the magician tends to, and could be depicted as someone with their eyes closed. The mystical impulse, naturally, if you think about the goal of union with the divine, you're naturally drawn towards closing your eyes. The magician, using this analogy, is opening their eyes, looking in wonder and awe at the world, fulfilling their curiosity, being a hunter in a way, a hunter of experience, of knowledge, and also conscious of being creative and procreative within the world. So they're very, very different, complementary, as I hope you can see, but actually different in their aims. And so now that I've given you these two thumbnail sketches, and of course we could debate both these definitions enormously, and maybe one day we can do that, but just for the moment that's enough, I think. Now that I've suggested these two thumbnail sketches, can you ask yourself the question again? Now, in the light of what I've said, would you revise your sense of who you are? Would you say you are primarily a mystic or magician? And maybe you can type 2 in your answer. So I know, type 2 and then say, and then I'll know whether you've changed your mind or not. If you say you've changed your mind, or whether you sense yourself to be a mystic or magician. Linda Crowley is saying, for instance, both are present, but the mystic is dominant. Nancy is saying a mystical magician. Lawrence is saying, now I'd revise it to a magician. So Mike Amos is saying the same, an extrovert and a magician. So this is going to be interesting. I've made our research a bit more complicated to analyze it. I would just so love to have thousands of answers so we could really look at that. And the reason I've asked about the introvert and the extrovert is I just have a hunch. It's just a hunch that possibly someone who is more introverted than extroverted will tend to be drawn more to the mystical path. And someone who is more extroverted rather than introverted might well be drawn more to the magical path of engagement with the world. But I may be wrong, so I'd love to test this hypothesis. So what I'll do is I'll analyze the answers. I'll wait a week so that all the answers have come in from the recordings and from YouTube and everywhere. And then I'll try, hopefully we'll have enough numbers, and let's see if there's some kind of correlation. And then I'll write that up in a blog about it. And in my blog post that goes with today's recording, I'll give you a link to an online test for extroversion and introversion in case you don't know yourself which you are. Still a mystic, says Marina. I used to be a magician when I was younger, but have changed since then. Still an extrovert, though. That's fascinating, isn't it? It's really fascinating, and maybe it does change with time. You know, when we're younger, are we more likely to be drawn to a magical path because we're full of the desire to engage with life and to transform our lives and to head towards goals? And as we get older, do we become perhaps more attracted to mysticism, and that we want to just let go and surrender some of those ambitions and that striving that we've been pushing for so long? That would be another interesting dimension to explore, the relationship between age and magician versus mystic. But let's not complicate things. I won't embarrass you by asking you for your age. Although why should it be embarrassing, really? That's an old-fashioned idea, isn't it? But maybe we can do that research a bit later with some kind of online poll. In the meanwhile, let's do a little meditation in which we explore both those dynamics within us. Because I can see that many of you have said that you can feel both. Where does a witch fall into this? Well, think of the two explanations I've given and see where it does. In a way, with Wicca, certainly, there's a mystical component in terms of getting in touch with deity and becoming one with deity. And there's a magical component too. So that's interesting. And so given the fact that we may well have both dynamics within us, if you want to, let's do a meditation. And as always, only do this if you want to. So let's let go of these thoughts now and just open to an awareness of being in the sacred grove. Here we are in a forest clearing, the good earth beneath our feet. And sense yourself sitting down on the earth. And you can feel the energy of the earth, and just allow any tensions or concerns just to drop away as you open yourself to the slow healing rhythm of the earth. And the energy of the earth slows you down and allows you to just become more relaxed and open. And you sense the trees around you. You can feel or sense their roots deep in the soil, their trunks stretching up into the air, and their branches reaching high into the sky.